I'm doing is legal. This is why I believe I'll receive justice in the higher court.
Used to hit more to right center than the left. Oh, it is good! He did it! He did it!
It doesn't matter what your background is and where you come from. If you have dreams and you have goals, and that's all that really matters.
But there's only one Usain Bolt.
I owe, a lot to Charlie.
The freedom of expression that the entire world could see.
When you black, it's not a movement. It's a lifestyle. This is who we are.
On October 4th, 2021, Bubba Wallace became the first African-American driver to win a NASCAR Cup Series race since 1963. He was the only black racer in the field and the first full-time driver of color in NASCAR since 1973. A year previously, at the same Talladega racetrack, Wallace's garage was the subject of an FBI investigation after a pull-down rope had been fashioned into a noose. Officials were quick to determine there was no deliberate foul play, but it thrust Wallace into the spotlight all the same. In the middle of a nationwide referendum on the treatment of African Americans, it was a litmus test for a sport rooted in the conservative South. Wallace and his rivals, the length of the paddock, took a stand.
We're no strangers to moving fast.
And we know how life can have that same quality.
But now
is the time to slow down
and reflect.
The events of recent weeks
highlighted the work we still need to do as a nation
to condemn racial inequality and racism.
The deaths of George Floyd,
Breonna Taylor,
Ahmaud Arbery, and countless others in the black community are heartbreaking.
Are heartbreaking and can no longer be ignored.
The process begins with us listening
and learning, because understanding the problem
is the first step in fixing it.
We are committed
to listening with empathy
and with an open heart to better educate ourselves.
We will use this education to advocate
for change in our nation, our communities,
and most importantly, in our own homes.
Even after the headlines go away.
All of our voices, they make a difference.
No matter how big or how small.
It is all of our responsibility
to no longer be silent.
We just can't stay silent.
We have a long road ahead of us.
But let's commit to make that journey together.
Together.
Our differences should not divide us.
It is our love for all mankind
that will unite us
as we work together
to make real change.
As we work together to make real change.
For a sport that appeared antithetical to African American culture, it was a powerful moment.
Very gracious to have an elite group of drivers that are willing to stand up for what's right and be able to convey the message as well and push the envelope. So just shows the kind of respect that we have for each other. On the track, maybe not so much, but off the track, we definitely work together and come together as one.
NASCAR looks and sounds a little different with Bubba Wallace in its ranks. William Darrell Wallace Jr. started racing in the Bandolero Series when he was 9. He moved quickly through the ranks, helped in part by NASCAR's Drive for Diversity program. He made his Cup Series debut in 2017, becoming the first African-American NASCAR driver in 11 years. The following year, he was hired as the first full-time African-American driver since Wendell Scott.
What does Bubba Wallace do right here? Is he going to make this block?
Wallace's rise coincided with a volatile period in modern American history, and he embraced his responsibility as a visible black presence in a majority white sport. In May 2020, after the murder of George Floyd, Wallace became the de facto representative of the Black Lives Matter movement in NASCAR. His particular focus became the Confederate flag, a frequent symbol at races in the South.
You look at the Confederate flag and how, yes, it may mean heritage to most, but to a group that is in a lot of pain right now, the African-American community is in a lot of pain, that's a symbol of hate.
NASCAR President Steve Phelps moved quickly in support, and on June 10, 2020, officially banned the display of the flag at its events.
Really proud of the efforts of NASCAR for stepping up and wanting to, be a part of change. And I know it's tough. They're in a tough situation. They've been in a tough situation for a really long time now, but I think this is the most crucial time, and the time is of the essence right now in the world that we're in the nation that we're in, to create change and create unity and come together and really try to be more inclusive.
The next race was in Talladega, where a member of Wallace's team reported the noose.
It's been tough. It's been hell, really. I wouldn't say hell. It's just been hectic, carrying his weight and carrying his burden. I wouldn't really say burden either. I'm proud to stand where I'm at. Sorry I'm not wearing my mask, but I wanted to show whoever it was that you're not going to take away my smile, and I'm going to keep on going.
When the rest of the paddock found out what had happened, they united behind their colleague, symbolically pushing his car to the grid at the start of the race.
The pre-race deal was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to witness in my life. From all the supporters, from drivers, from crew members, everybody here, the badass fan base, thank you guys for coming out here. This is truly incredible, and I'm proud to be a part of this sport.
Wallace now drives in a car with the number 23 on the roof, a number popularized in sport by Michael Jordan. That is no coincidence. Jordan is the team owner of 2311 Racing. At the end of 2021, Bubba Wallace had only been in NASCAR for 4 seasons, and he'd only celebrated 1 race victory. But he had prompted an enormous change in the culture of one of America's most popular sports.
Moore's punching had far more sting and power than his opponents. Olsen was soon in for real trouble. In the 3rd round, he got...
Nobody in boxing history has knocked out more fighters than Archie Moore.
By round 11, the spectators began to realize that Archie must be invincible. Durrell, who had never been knocked...
During an incredible 27-year career, he became the longest reigning world light heavyweight champion of all time. He's the only man to have fought both Rocky Marciano and Muhammad Ali, with Floyd Patterson sandwiched in between for good measure. Moore was tough. He had to be to escape the poverty of Missouri during the Great Depression. He tried his hand at petty crime, But when that landed him in reform school, he found his calling. For 17 years after his professional debut in 1935, Moore pretty much fought anyone, anywhere, at any time, and usually punched him to the canvas. But he was denied a shot at a major belt.
It was billed by the promoters as the World Heavyweight Championship, but no official body recognized it as such.
It wasn't until 1952, at the ripe old age of 39, that Moore was invited to fight for the light heavyweight title. He promptly took the belt from Joey Maxim, then defended it 9 times over the next decade before relinquishing his crown to move up to the heavyweight division.
The oldest fighting champion in boxing history had won the fight of his life. Archie Moore, colored light heavyweight world champion.
During his long apprenticeship, Moore developed into a supreme fighter. He punched hard, possessed a solid chin, and worked strategically and defensively through his bouts. It earned him the nickname, the Mongoose. Even when he was floored, like in 1958 against Ivan Durrell, he found his way back to his feet.
Archie down again, and the crowd thinking this surely is the end of a great career. Indeed, Canadians among the spectators.
When Moore eventually tried to step up and claim the more prestigious heavyweight title in 1955, he became the 49th and final consecutive victim of Rocky Marciano. The following year, Floyd Patterson knocked him out in the 5th round. By the time a young Muhammad Ali stopped Moore in the 4th in 1962, the game was up for the near 50-year-old. Moore's relentless work ethic didn't end with his career in the ring. He dabbled as an actor, found an organization called Any Boy Can, which taught boxing to underprivileged youth, and spent time as a professional trainer. He was an early mentor to Ali before the two fell out, and then found himself in George Foreman's corner for the 1976 Rumble in the Jungle. He died in 1998, age 81, celebrated as the greatest light heavyweight in boxing history, and one of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters of all time.
In every sport, there comes a point, you know, where someone comes along and changes things. There comes a sports person that just comes through and changed it for everyone else. This was the team. They basically are responsible for the modern game.
The sport of cricket might have originated in England, taken to new heights by Australia.
One of the greatest run-getters in cricketing history, Donald Bradman.
And turned into a multi-billion-dollar experience in India. But its soul belongs in the Caribbean. Cricket owes an enormous debt to its West Indian influence. The carefree batting, terrifyingly fast bowling, and partying spectators provide color and flavor to a sport anchored in tradition. In exchange, the West Indies owe a debt to cricket. In the Caribbean, cricket has long been a vehicle for self-determination, a chance for a collection of colonies, many heavily populated by descendants of slaves, to compete with and best their oppressors.
It's not just a sport. It's not just something that you play to make a living.
The West Indies cricket team is drawn from 15 nation states and territories. From Jamaica, along the Caribbean archipelago, to Guyana on mainland South America. Representative matches began as early as the 1890s, but test status didn't arrive until 1928, when the West Indies joined England, Australia, and South Africa on the international stage.
I would like to introduce to you the members of the West Indies cricket team.
Progress was slow until after the Second World War, but there was one beacon of hope.
There comes on the scene George Headley to give a tonic to the West Indies prospects.
George Headley was a prolific run-scoring batter whose record befitted a stronger team. But even in losing sides, he had a profound impact.
Headley in his first innings passed the 150.
Michael Manley, the former Prime Minister of Jamaica, wrote that Headley was black excellence, personified in a white world and in a white sport. This came at a time when the Caribbean was experiencing a political awakening. And as Manley wrote, Headley became the focus for longing of an entire people for proof of their own self-worth. It was a moment of immense pride when Headley was appointed the first black captain of the West Indies in 1948.
Players and their two captains, Frank Worrell and Ted Dexter.
The next black West Indian captain was even more transformative. Sir Frank Worrell steered the West Indies into the 1960s, a turbulent period politically, as decolonization spread throughout the Caribbean. On the cricket field and in the public arena, Worrell brought the disparate strands of the West Indies together, leading with courage and emphasizing the importance of all the island nations standing together.
Confirmed the West Indies as the most powerful side in the world.
The tour to Australia 1960-61 was especially memorable, as it contained the first tied test in cricket history. That was the high point of a series played in such good spirit and featuring refreshingly attacking cricket that the visitors were farewelled with a parade through the streets of Melbourne on their departure. One of the stars of that series was a young Gary Sobers, who was on his way to becoming the finest all-rounder in the sport's history.
But for a man like Gary Sobers, considered the best all-rounder in the world, to come in at number 6 was disastrous for the home side.
By the time Sobers hung up his spikes in the mid-1970s, the West Indies were blossoming into the most powerful force in the sport.
In 1947, Jackie Robinson made history by becoming the first black player in Major League Baseball since the 1880s.
Jackie's breaking of the color barrier is literally the greatest moment in the history of baseball.
Robinson was a great player. He won a batting title and an MVP and won a World Series with the Brooklyn Dodgers. But Robinson was picked not because he was the best, but because he had the courage to not fight back against the abuse of fans and opponents. And now, every year on April 15, everyone wears his number 42 to celebrate Jackie Robinson Day.
What we did with the 4 fast bowlers, some other teams in the past had 2, 3 fast bowlers that were winning matches. When we had 4, it was something brand new.
Led by the giant Clive Lloyd, the West Indies set new standards in international cricket during the 1970s. Their success came off the back of a troupe of lightning-fast bowlers that terrorized batters.
I don't think it was intimidatory bowling at all. I thought that the fellow was bowling extremely fast, and as you know, the Indians are not accustomed to sort of bowling of that nature. And most of them did not bat as well as they should have. I thought they were slightly scared, and a few of them did get hurt because they weren't in the right positions.
This was a time for self-expression and celebration, for newly independent nations to assert their character against the establishment with bat and ball. In the long, hot English summer of 1976, the tourists relished their supremacy. As fast bowler Michael Holding recalled, "We wanted to be able to show Englishmen, you brought the game to us, and now we're better than you."
West Indian fast bowling decimated the English batting.
For most of the next 20 years, the West Indies swept all before them. They won the first 2 Cricket World Cups and reached the final of the third. From 1980 to 1995, they didn't lose a test series. And they did it all with swagger and style.
What we had then was great. You know, I'm not one who gloats about modern-day play. I'm just satisfied being one of the pioneers of the sport itself.
The golden age of West Indian cricket was one of the most colorful and thrilling in the sport. A joyous celebration of the Caribbean that put the islands on the map and gave residents unmatched pride.
The Caribbean kind of culture has that kind of flamboyance with it. So whether we're batting, they were trying to hit it for 4 and 6. When they were bowling, they were either trying to get your wicket or hit pace, trying to knock your head off.
Unfortunately, when the West Indies came back to earth, they landed with a thump. Despite the occasional supreme individual like Brian Lara, the conveyor belt of talent dried up in the 1990s, and the system crumbled. Cricket stopped being viewed as the goal for ambitious youth as football and basketball gained in popularity.
Right now, the West Indies are not winning regularly. There's a diffusion in the interest of the sport. People play football, they play basketball. They don't have time about cricket.
Glimpses of the Calypso cricket magic continue to sprout from time to time, especially in the game's shorter formats. T20 World Cups in 2012 and 16 testify to the potential that remains in the Caribbean. Historian Hilary Beckles argues the decline of cricket in the Caribbean is a consequence of the erosion of the sense of identity that the likes of Frank Worrell and Clive Lord engendered. Recent generations are no longer motivated to prove the worth of their race or further the cause of independence, nor are they among the wave of stars in the 70s and 80s driven by payback and liberated to express themselves. Instead, as the nations have gained independence, weakening West Indian Federation, the cricketers have in turn become more independent, traveling the world as freelancers for hire.
Everybody who walks out to play for the West Indies wants to win all the time, but they haven't prepared themselves to win. They don't want to put in the hard work. And at the end of it, they also know that they don't have to be quote-unquote great to make a lot of money.
Beckles wrote, "The West Indies is an idea, an intellectual construct, rather than a reality." But what an idea. One that transformed cricket in the 20th century and continues to energize the sport today.